Peace and blessings, everybody. I am Jasir, King Ruler Franklin, mindset engineer at healpthd.com. I am the author of PTHD. It is a phrase that I coined about 15 years or so ago. And today I want to dive into what it's about, where it came from, all that good stuff, all the questions you may have about what is this Heal PTHD thing. I want to answer some of those questions today in this video. So stick around and check it out. Heal PTHD. The key word is heal. We want to talk about healing the traumas that we encounter, experience, even endure while living in the hood. For those who are still living in the hood per se, and for those who have made it out, doesn't matter where you are on this globe. If you're in the hood, you know what I'm talking about. If you're out of the hood, you may feel like you've moved past the hood, but trust me, you can take the hood out the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto or the hood out of the person. You just can't get it out of them until they address it. This stands for post-traumatic hood disorder. We're talking about a disorder that is bred primarily in the hood. What does that look like? That looks like the normalization of things in most societies that are dysfunctional. The hood tends to normalize dysfunctional behaviors. And we'll get more into that in a minute. But the disorder is that when these behaviors begin to affect your life, they begin to affect your emotions, how you interact with other human beings and people, your family, your friends, your spouse, your children. It even affects who and what you become. PTHD or post-traumatic hood disorder is a very, very, very serious and real thing that must be paid attention to if people truly want to live their fullest life. We're not talking about just because you got money, you're living your fullest life. Yeah, money is a tool that allows you to get a lot of things done. But what it will never do is cure your pain you felt in your childhood. It will never remove that pain you've seen when you had to defend yourself against these people in your neighborhood for no apparent reason, when you saw death or drive-bys, when you experienced a heartbreak, when any trauma you experience, money cannot buy you out of it. A new house, a new home cannot buy you out of it. You're just going to get all of these things and feel empty inside afterwards. Why? Because that pain inside of you is blocking you from rising to the top. Where did PTHD come from? Well, it came from me, obviously, right? But it came from me. I was going through a terrible breakup with my ex-fiance about 15 or so years ago. And I didn't know what to do because majority of the time, men do not have a shoulder to cry on. We do not have friends or other males that want to hear how we feel about this breakup because to them it's weak. It's like keep it moving. You get over it. Get up, get down the road. Don't even worry about her. Get another one. It's like one of those things. But you don't have a place to unpack how you really truly feel about this breakup. Well, I went to a therapist right across the street from my barbershop. I went to a therapist and I sat down with this lady for about a month. And as I'm talking to this lady, who does not look like the man in the mirror, but as I'm talking to this lady, for the first time, I'm actually putting all this stuff on the table and I'm looking at it head on. I'm facing it head on. And I'm like, this is not normal. Like, there's no way I can keep living this way. All the things that I've gone through in my life, the things that I've seen growing up in the ghetto, in the hood, this is not normal. Because see, I have friends and people that I have acquaintances with that were from different demographics, different sides of town. They didn't have these issues that we had over here. But it's normal for us over here to feel like this is what we're supposed to be experiencing every day. But why is it not normal over there? Why is this lady I'm sitting across from looking at me like I'm a science project because of what I've gone through and what I've survived? I couldn't understand it. And when I walked out of that office one day, I said, I'm traumatized. And I had to admit it, I'm traumatized. That's where this is coming from. And then I had to put it together. My trauma came from the hood. I have PTHD. Now, what is PTHD? Well, again, it's centered in trauma. And what is trauma? Trauma are things that we go through in life that hurt us, makes us cry, makes us feel a very emotional way about it. It breaks our heart. It damages us emotionally and psychologically that you never forget it. And when, depending on how deep the scar tissue runs, this trauma will affect your psyche, your mind, because again, the trauma is recorded in the mind. So however you record it and then however you respond to it becomes the way you respond to the trauma you see when it comes back up again. For instance, let me give you an example. Growing up in Los Angeles, it was a big thing that you had to survive. You had to fight to survive. You had to be willing to be banged on at any moment. You could not stand down. If you stand down, you will be picked on. They call it bullying today. You will be picked on every day. So if you didn't fight back and show you had the heart to fight back, it was a bad idea. That thing created anger in people, particularly me. So now when somebody says something to me that was outlandish, there was no conversation. It was just, we gonna have to get them up and squabble, homie. Like, we just gotta fight. I couldn't take that anger everywhere I went. I couldn't take it on the basketball court. I couldn't take it into a marriage. I couldn't take it with dealing with my children. I couldn't take that everywhere, but I didn't know that I was taking it. I didn't know that I was taking that defensiveness everywhere, because you really can't see it when you're in it. You can't see dysfunction when you're waddling, you're living in it every day. You don't see that as wrong. So PTHD is the trauma that's rooted in the hood, that shows up as a disorder in your life when you move out of the hood, or even if you're in the hood. It's a disorder of how you move as a person through life, and is rooted in the trauma that you experienced in the hood. That's what post-traumatic hood disorder, the normalized dysfunction that is showing up in your life as disorders. And disorders are designed to show you, hey, something is wrong. This ain't right. It's going to ruin some stuff. And then it starts to actually ruining things. And you're still not getting it because guess what? It's normal to you. But it's truly PTHD. Who does PTHD affect? It affects that person, that woman, that child, that man, that little girl that grew up in the hood, that have had these experiences, that no one around them readily identified it as a trauma or a dysfunctional behavior. That little girl, that little boy who grew up, made it through, went to college, got a degree, got the house, got the spouse, got the dog and the picket fence, but still wind up being divorced 2 or 3 times. They can't really keep nurturing relationships. They can keep surface level relationships, but real true nurturing relationships are hard. That person who gets angry quickly, who's temperamental, who doesn't trust people very much, or if at all. The person who's okay with co-parenting versus having a spouse that they raise their children with equally in the same house. That person who's technically on these pills from diabetes and these other diseases, because in the hood, let's face it, it's not a lot of healthy options. On top of the stress you experience in the hood, that's killing you from the inside. The hood affects all of these different dynamics of people. The hood affects, particularly, let's be honest, the African American population and the Hispanic population, because the hood was designed for us. Let's just keep it real. The hood was basically the redlining process. Between the red lines is the hood. Outside the red lines is better pastures, right? The places where the kids get bused to go to school outside the red lines, right? So the hood affects anybody within those red lines. If you live between the red lines called the hood, that's who it affects. When does PTHD actually show up in your life? Well, you'll see it. You'll feel it. You'll experience it. You'll go through it. You'll have all of these different feelings and emotions about it, but you just don't know what those emotions are because your mind has normalized those emotions. But when you are aware of these emotions, you will feel it overcome you. You will feel the anger overcome you. You will feel the frustration, the envy of what somebody else have that you may not have, because the poverty in you just wants you to want more, which you're supposed to want more, right? But it's not supposed to be an envious desire. It's supposed to be a purposeful desire that you want for yourself based upon what's for you. And that requires you to know your purpose. So when does it show up? It shows up in scenarios that you feel uncomfortable in. Your job is to, in that very moment, ask yourself why. Why does this bother me? Why do I feel uncomfortable about this situation? Where does that uncomfortable feeling come from? What is it rooted in? Hope that makes sense. Why is Heal PTHD podcast here? Why do we do the podcast? And more importantly, why do we have the curriculum that we created for Heal PTHD? Well, let's start with the podcast. The podcast is here to shed light on this concept. Let's be real again. Podcasts have become very popular in the last couple of years, and they've become a very good space to air out and to get your messages out to people in mass amounts. So we want to use this platform called Heal PTHD Podcast to discuss different topics of PTHD and to ultimately provide solutions to these issues while discussing them with the people who are actually going through it, and some people we may all know that have gone through it but are living their lives still, somewhat functional, but not functional. The podcast is here to reveal the truth about what Heal PTHD is and how we truly need to deal with it in order to better our lives as a community. You see, community is a real thing, that what I do by myself doesn't just affect me. It affects you eventually. I'm going to give birth to some children that's going to think like I think, act like I think. And if I think from a dysfunctional perspective, I'm going to have a dysfunctional household. This household is going to go out into the community. Now imagine you got blocks and blocks and blocks of the same dysfunction. We're all going to clash at some point. So we have to worry about what the next person is doing, because eventually that thing is going to come and better my life, or it's going to rob me at gunpoint one day. Either way, it's going to affect each other. Heal PTHD Podcast is here to shine the light on this concept that has been blinding us for way too long. And that's the fact that the hood is rooted in trauma that is showing up as disorders in our lives every day. You don't believe me? Look at the music. Watch the award shows. Look at the younger generations now. Look at the community you live in. What kind of food options do you have? What's the curriculum like in the schools now? Look around us. The question is, why have we accepted this so long? Only we can change it. How do we change it? Through the mindset. We got to go back to the mindset. We got to go back to the mindset. The mindset is where everything is stored. All of your trauma, all of your fun, all of your information, all of your intel, all of your knowledge is stored here. All of your experiences in your life, touch, feel, taste, hear, smell, all happens through the mind. It's processed through the mind. And if that process of the mind experiences trauma, it has to do something with it. It creates a program to save you from it some kind of way. Fight or flight, one of the two. But whatever program you write, it becomes a thing in your life, and that becomes how you walk and you show up in everything you do, from work to relationships to parenting and to anything else in the community. It dictates how you show up in the world. PTHD is one of the things that we need to deal with, particularly and specifically for those, like I said, who come from between the red lines. I just want to share this information with people, and we need people to come on the podcast and share their information and their experiences of the hood that they've had, and more importantly, how it has affected them. Please join our campaign. If you're interested in being a guest on Heal PTHD, go to healpthd@gmail and send us an invite or request that you would like to be a part of a show or episode and discuss this thing with us and help us to shed the light on this concept so that we can heal the hood technically and literally. We can't heal the hood by putting band-aids on it. We got to heal the hood from within the mindsets of the residents living in the hood and those who have come from it. I call them hood refugees. Please join our campaign. Go to healpthd.com or go to healpthd@gmail.com and submit your desire to be a guest on the show and help us to spread the healing of post-traumatic hood disorder. I am Jasir. King Ruler Franklin, mindset engineer at healpthd.com. Look forward to seeing you soon. Peace.
If I knew inside lies a superpower that would enable me to only be broke in the shower. If I knew the past didn't have to be the future, the wrong circle of influence puts plans to neutral. Happiness can never be found in someone else. It's a lonely road on the way to knowledge itself. Take control of what you allow your senses to witness. Dedication leads to elevated positions like CEO, husband, father, a teacher. Let character take you where your talent won't keep you. Before forgetting.